This is Cosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Cosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. And Kyle and I are here from the frozen wastes of Texas. That's right. We did survive Ice-mageddon, or whatever they're calling it.
The ice sheets have finally melted.
Yeah, they finally melted. We had quite a week last week.
What are you going to call it there in the hill country?
I don't know.
Ice-mageddon sounds pretty good.
Ice-mageddon works?
Ice-mageddon works. Yeah, it was an adventure. Right. We had this, we have this saying in our family, like, it's an old joke. You never have an adventure sitting at home. Well, we proved that false.
Busted pipe is an instant adventure.
Yeah, and power gone, and of course where I stay up at the family house is way up on a hill. The driveway is very steep and it's just a dirt road. So we were stuck, couldn't get down. And no power. We were living off of water we had filled the bathtub with. We filled up the tub before the pipes froze, and then we were living off that water for a week.
I hope you cleaned the tub first.
Yeah, it's very clean. It's very polished and shiny. And a big tub, so we were lucky there.
So how are the grapes doing in the cold and the snow?
Well, they go dormant.
We won't know until bud break.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they took some damage.
Yep.
So, this pruning season will leave extra buds just in case they don't all sprout, and hopefully we'll be able to continue pruning, as is. If not, we may have to cut the vines back to the ground in some cases.
Yep.
But we'll find out.
Who determines that? Are you able to?
Well, you see it.
Yeah, you can
with
see
the
it.
way they sprout. Like if they sprout out at the ends and there's no growth. In the middle part, then you got to cut them back.
Yeah, the vine training we do shapes the vines like a T. You have one trunk and it comes out and splits, right? And they're just all T-shaped. And if you only get growth at the very ends and none of the stuff in the middle there in the T grows any buds, then it's damaged and you got to cut it down and start over.
And then what happens if you slap Kyle upside the head while you're explaining?
That was close.
It was pretty close there.
So when will the buds sprout?
Well, I don't know. Normally it's in, can be March, April, and it depends on the varietal. But now that we've had this cold snap, it could push it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, and then, good luck.
Yeah.
Well, you guys had a little taste of Minnesota.
Yeah, it was weird for me because I've lived in Vermont and I lived in Wyoming. So, it would have been nothing there. It's just everyday normal winter, right?
Yeah.
Or even less. It was just like, yeah, okay, it's snowing, whatever. There's ice. Yeah, big deal. But Texas is not prepared.
Obviously not.
We don't have plows. We don't have tire chains. There's not the equipment for the cities to put salt on the roads or keep the ice off of them. And then normal houses are not built with snow or ice in mind. So, like I remember in Vermont with my uncle building his new house, like there's all these regulations to have water pipes below the frost line in the ground, and your foundations and everything have to be dug to be below that stuff. Nobody cares about that here. We don't have ice here. It might be an occasional overnight ice, but it doesn't generally freeze and then stay below freezing for days and days and days. That's a rare thing. And then for it to be also like ice storms and not just like really clear, because it'll get cold here on a clear night and drop below freezing, certainly. But it doesn't stay that way for days and also rain ice on us. That's just not a thing that happens here.
So you've been there 30 years or almost, and that's the first time it's been that bad in your memory, at least?
Since 97, yeah. And
97. That you lived there or that it was that bad?
No, that's when we moved here.
Okay.
And I know people who've been here way longer than that haven't seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Well, we'd probably have to go back to the late Pleistocene.
Right.
So obviously this is a signal, a harbinger of the new ice age.
That's exactly what
on.
I was like, let them roll, let the glaciers roll in. Let's
That's coming next. Glaciers will be coming down. Glaciers are going to overrun Austin, San Antonio.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
I was polishing my snowboard, man. I was ready for it.
Be careful what you wish for, right? It's enough to be an interesting times.
When I went out of the house on the day after we had the big the first ice storm, and everything was covered in snow, and our driveway going down the hill was just perfect. Like, it's just a perfect, blue square freaking slope. I was just like, God, I need to get my freaking snowboard out. This is amazing. It'd have been great, but of course I would have had to hoof it all the way back up, so that would not have been fun. Yeah.
Yeah, geez.
I don't have I don't have the car.
You had to do that at one point anyway, right? I mean, your 4x4 couldn't even make it up the hill to the house, so you had to walk.
Yeah, I had to hike down there
anyway.
I had to hike down there to make sure the wind hadn't blown the car off the driveway and into the woods. So
that's nuts.
Yeah, I was Kyle and I were working on music on Saturday night down here in the Cube. And then we ended up hanging out until 3 a.m, and we both go outside and everything's already coated in ice. It had been misting sort of, and it was below freezing, and just everything was incredibly slippery. And I was like, well, I could probably make it. And I got in my car and started driving to the back. I got on the first steep hill on the driveway and got part of the way up, and then the car slowed down, stopped, and started sliding back down the hill. I got it to stop before it went off the edge of the driveway and down into the woods, barely. But it was so, it was sliding.
Yeah, it was hanging off the edge.
Yeah, basically it was hanging off the edge, and I got out and I shut the door like, okay, didn't move.
Did you get any video of it?
Find a big rock.
Well, it was in the middle of the night.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, the storms were amazing, and it was just interesting times. And then family had no power, so me and the parents sitting up there with no power. We had candle lights and we were playing Clue. We got board games. You can't watch TV, you can't get on the internet, you can't play video games. So yeah, we played Clue for hours with no power in the candlelight. It was a lot of fun. Old school.
Old school, that's right.
Yeah.
So, do you guys know of Canyon Lake Gorge?
Not familiar
Canyon
with it.
Lake sounds familiar. What? Why? What are we talking
One
about?
One of the patrons that I recorded a video response to here asked about that, and he sent me a link to a paper, and it sounded familiar to me, and I went back in my files and looked, and sure enough, I had the original paper, which was from from 2010, entitled "A Rapid Formation of a Modern Bedrock Canyon by a Single Flood Event." Michael P. Lamb and Mark A. Fonstad.
That's cool.
Doesn't ring a bell?
Nope.
I think it's close to you guys. Kyle,
Yeah.
while you're there, look up Canyon Lake.
Yeah.
How far is Canyon Lake from you guys?
I don't know, but it sounds familiar. Let's
I
find
don't
out.
think it's very far.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's close to you. I was looking on a map and I couldn't find precisely where you guys were located.
Well, that's a secret. That's a good thing.
Well, okay. I wasn't going to publicly reveal it. It was just
Yeah,
strictly for my
Guadalupe
own.
Blanco River. Yeah, that's
okay,
close.
yeah, the Guadalupe, yeah.
Canyon Lake Gorge.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Hey, look at that.
It's on the Guadalupe, which is
Yeah.
We
Right,
crossed that
look at
river.
that.
It's right near where we work.
Yeah, it's in Canyon Lake. Cool.
So you guys did not know that. So that gorge was cut in 2010 in 3 days of catastrophic flooding.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Yeah, we need to go check that out.
We definitely need to check that out. And yeah, I was looking, it's got everything is there. Imbricate rock.
Yeah, it was the 2002 flood.
Yeah.
We were here for that.
Yeah, we were here for that too. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
pretty intense.
Okay, so there's a canyon that was pretty much all created by that one flood episode.
Wow. Yeah, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah, here's from the abstract of the paper that was written on it. Deep river canyons are thought to form slowly over geological time, cut by moderate flows that reoccur every few years. In contrast, some of the most spectacular canyons on Earth and Mars were probably carved rapidly during ancient megaflood events. Quantification of the flood discharge, duration, and erosion mechanics that operated during such events is hampered because we lack modern analogs. Canyon Lake Gorge, Texas, was carved in 2002 during a single catastrophic flood. The event offers a rare opportunity to analyze canyon formation and test paleohydraulic reconstruction techniques under known topographic and hydraulic conditions. So, I think that's worth a little.
That is, yeah.
It's about an hour from where we live.
Yeah, I can. It's near San Marcos, so we can go check that out for sure.
Are you seeing any photographs?
Yeah, we see there's some photographs and a drone footage video here.
Yeah, you want to share some of that? I mean, there's some aerial stuff, and then I saw some photographs that showed drumlin-like features, imbricate boulders, several other things.
Down in the canyon.
Streamlined erosional residual type things.
Yeah, let's see if we can watch this drone video real quick.
Yeah, let me let this cat out.
All right. I can hear Todd.
I heard that. Yeah. So is that the same river you guys were talking about? You saw the bark scraped off 30 feet up?
The Guadalupe is one of them. Yeah,
one of them.
The Medina is the one that goes
near us,
and that's the one we've done a lot of kayaking on. I mean, we've also been on the Guadalupe.
Yep.
And the Frio and the Sabinal and all these other little rivers.
Yeah, this link was sent from Larry, who goes by the name Red Tuna. Greetings from San Antonio. So he's local.
Yeah. God, look at that. That's amazing.
There's this giant rectangular
Trying to get the perspective
slabs.
here. Yeah. So yeah, this whole canyon was cut in 3 days.
Canyons that look just like that.
Sure.
Off on people's properties, and we always wonder, like, how did these get here? Because they don't generally have a lot of water moving through them.
Right.
A lot of times they're completely dry like that.
Well, yeah, it doesn't look like there's a stream in it now.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine there with the reservoir, they probably periodically release water. But let me see, the story was, 2002, what was it, a lot of rainfall?
Yeah, we had like a tropical storm kind of came over here and sat down on us for 3 days.
Right.
And it was just nonstop rain, and it flooded everywhere. It was really crazy.
Yeah, it overtopped the spillway.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this.
That. Yeah, look at that.
Now, it's still diminutive compared to, some of the,
of course,
late Pleistocene, terminal ice age stuff. But
hey, did you see those ripples? Sorry, Randall.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
You see how fast something can happen, though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's minuscule, but that's huge to happen in a couple of days.
Yeah, and the peak discharges, I think, if I recall, were around 60,000 cubic feet per second.
Mm.
So that's considerably smaller than.
Yeah.
What, the Mississippi is 100,000?
Yeah, in that range, I think 100,000. Yeah, 100 to 150 maybe. Yeah, so there you see the current. Yeah.
Trickle.
Yeah, look at the undercutting there.
Yeah.
And man, yeah.
And there's the lake. Huh. That's the lake, yeah. Very nice.
So yeah, that would be a very interesting case study.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Man, we could get out there soon.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, when we finally get out there to see you guys, we'll definitely have to take a little excursion.
For sure.
I want to see
if
that.
It's private property because
Well, yeah, that was my next question.
No, I think they've turned it into kind of a
park.
Yeah. Yeah, because the little wooden bridges and stuff, I remember hearing somebody telling me like, oh, there's this place you can go camp and hike, and they built all these bridges over these canyons. And it's like right nearby here. I mean, if somebody was telling me this, I think it might have been Kamak telling me.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Years ago.
Yeah.
I never knew where it was. So that's cool. We'll check it out.
Yeah, for sure. So
launch the drone.
Yep, I'll do that for sure.
Yeah, so this was thanks to Larry. I don't know your last name, Larry, but thanks, Larry. I hope you're still with us. And I did record a video response Larry, to your link that you sent us. So thanks for that. It was by the internet handle of Red Tuna.
Okay. Yeah, Larry, write us an email. Us, Kyle and I. If we go out there, you can come along with us and we'll go check it out.
Yeah, Brothers of the Serpent.
Yeah.
At gmail.com.
He says he did manage to track down a paper, but cannot seem to attach the file. We'll send to Gmail address. But it turns out I had copied that paper, 10 years ago.
You've been hiding that paper from us all this time?
Yeah,
well, I forgot. I just forgot. I've got, hundreds of papers that I've grabbed when I had the opportunity, but haven't had a chance to actually dive into yet.
Well, you need to go through them and check for anything that has Texas in it.
Oh, I'll stay up all night tonight.
Yeah, I expect a report by the end of the week.
Going back to the paper, we find that canyon morphology is strongly dependent on rock type, which we knew. Plucking of limestone blocks produced waterfalls, inner channels, and bedrock strath terraces, whereas abrasion of cemented alluvium sculpted walls, plunge pools, and streamlined islands. Wow.
Well, Randall, take a minute and just let people know what you're doing with the Q&A, though, for the Patreon contributors, right?
Yeah, I think we've got about 10 or 11 video recorded responses to comments and questions that patrons have sent in since last summer. And I'll be continuing to do those. We've got some new ones, and there's still some good ones that need to be responded to. So
one of the perks of being a patron, right, is Randall's going to answer your questions personally here, that then are available through a pass coded video.
Yeah.
So we're doing several of those a month now.
And I don't know if I'll be able to. One of the first disclaimers I make on the very first introducing Randall responds to questions and answers from patrons is that I may not be able to answer every question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Randall
responds to your questions.
I'll respond.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, what the hell are you talking about? No,
you have to circle back.
There's some of those.
No, but there's been some good ones, some real good ones, and I think they'd be of general interest as well to the other folks that are. And I suppose eventually we'd release them, but for now they're going to be behind.
That's right.
A passcode.
For the patrons.
Just because we got to do something special for.
For all the support, which we really appreciate, for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be answering one that came from Finland. Really well thought out, explicative of possibly a 260 mile wide crater in Finland.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, making the point that Finland being glaciated, so like Canada, a lot of the ancient astroblemes have been excavated by the glaciers.
Oh yeah.
And undoubtedly the glacial meltwater floods as well, which have stripped away the upper surfaces of bedrock and exposed the craters underneath that might not have otherwise been visible.
Well, that's got to be about the whole width of the country, 260 miles.
Well, it would sure seem, yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
quite a few people are making contributions like that think they found astroblemes or impact sites. So
that's right.
We're going to need a whole team for that.
Yeah. Well, would it be something if we could find one actual and it gets proven?
Yeah.
So who do we name it after? Russ? Might as well be you.
Go with the Russ hole.
Let's see, there's already a serpent mound.
Yeah, I think we got plenty of names we can run down a list. Let's find more than one.
Yeah.
So
I've got quite a few already. I'm ready to go.
Well,
put some cores into and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, it could have a dual name. Think about Comet Shoemaker Levy 9, right?
Yeah.
So, well, first of all, if somebody sends it in, and then we go out and it turns out to be an actual impact crater, their name would have to come first.
Right.
No problem.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'd have to be like the Patreon supporter Bradley Russell crater.
Yes.
Of 2021 or something like that.
Yeah. Patron supporter Bradley Russell normal guy curator.
Yeah, exactly.
in Finn.
And if you look at Mike over there, you can see how thrilled and excited he is at the idea.
Yes, I can tell he definitely wants a crater named after him.
Okay, so we've been talking last episode about the Bonneville Flood.
Yes.
So what do you guys make of that?
I don't know, but I've been sharing this knowledge, newly gained, with people over throughout the ice storm. And I really appreciate learning about it. I was looking at the GIS maps and talking about it with my neighbors while we were camping out over by their actual fireplace.
By their fireplace, yeah.
When the power was out.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff.
The Bonneville Flood, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We were looking at the Great Salt Lake puddle.
Yep.
Versus the giant heart-shaped depression from the old lake. And it was, I just went all back through it and we talked all about it. It's really cool.
Well, we
want to learn more.
In the last episode, we looked at the lake, the configuration of the lake, and looked at its connections there with other lakes, which we didn't look in detail, but there was a lot of other lakes in that basin and range province at various times throughout the last ice age. And what appears to have happened is that, at least in the case of Lake Bonneville, there was a rapid rise in lake level, that brought it up high enough to breach over the lowest pass within the whole basin. Right? Which was the Red Rock Pass, which actually discharged to the north.
Right.
And we followed that. We went through the Red Rock Pass, the discharge point, the breakout point. We learned that there was about a 300-foot dam that was composed of friable, softer sedimentary material. So it was not, it was not very
robust. It was eating away
the water to any pressure. Apparently what happened is the water rose up and spilled over the top. And once it spilled over the top, it rapidly ate its way down until that softer sedimentary layer, which was sitting on top of a hard granite layer. And then once it hit that hard granite, that became sort of a non-erodible sill. And so the lake level stabilized at that level. So you have a high water level where it would have had to have risen in order to breach the sedimentary dam, right? Then it cut down, and once it hit that sill, it stabilized there. And that when it hit that sill, that's when the floodwaters terminated. The spigots were turned off, right? And now you had a residual lake sitting there that was 300 feet lower, or maybe more, 300, 340, something like that, lower than the high water mark, right? So that high water mark left a shoreline, and then when it dropped to the sill level, it left a secondary shoreline. And so then at that point, the floodwaters ceased, and you had this body of water that then apparently slowly evaporated away over several millennium to end up with what's there now, the residual puddle, which is the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, which we talked about last time, is that for however many thousands of years there was the lake stabilized between not flooding and not evaporating, so it was in equilibrium, and then something causes it to flood, and then right after that flood, there was nothing to maintain the filling of the lake anymore, and it evaporates. So it seems like the two are connected. There was a climate shift, so there was no more moisture keeping the lake full, and that may be connected to its actual flooding in the beginning. Or that's kind of what I got from it.
There's been some new literature and new papers published on it that I haven't had a chance to access yet and digest. But what it seemed like is that, there was a lake. There was multiple lakes because it was clearly the Basin and Range Province was much moister during the Ice Age because of the southern deflection of the jet stream carried moisture across the area of the Basin and Range. So there was a lot more regular rainfall, which meant that there were lakes. Now the question is, there may have been a lake there for millennia, but it seems like what happened was near the end of the lifespan of that lake, it would have rapidly filled the basin and then spilled over the dam on the north, which is up there at Red Rock Pass, which would suggest that perhaps there was a catastrophic rainfall that was prolonged enough to, cause a major spillover. Really what we just were looking at the Canyon Lake Gorge, which is what happened. You had 3 days of intense rainfall. The reservoir rose up. It spilled over. It overtopped the spillway. You could see that right there in the video that you guys played, that there was the spillway, and you could actually see where everything had been scoured, and then it sort of converged, and then what was a sheet flood coming over the spillway sort of concentrated and then began to carve down the canyon. Think about this. If the flood had lasted another 3 days, the canyon would have probably been twice as deep as it now is. So what that does show, though, is really the idea that, catastrophes happen. And this is something I've maintained for years and years, is that these catastrophic events will produce as much geomorphic work as would normally take place, say, even in thousands of years. So I guess, let's see, let's go now to the flood, and we'll pick it up where we left it. We were following the flood, and I think we got through Red Rock Pass, and then we sojourned at Massacre Rocks State Park, as I recall.
Right.
So I think maybe we'll pick it up there.
We got as far as Swan Falls.
Okay. All right.
That was our last stop on the last episode.
That's right.
That was our last stop. Okay.
Where the snake meets the Clearwater.
Well, that's where we're headed.
Going next.
Right. Now, I have never made a traverse of Hell's Canyon, so I suppose if we're going to really follow the entire flood pathway, we have to do that.
Yeah.
We have to charter a boat and go through Hell's Canyon because there's no roads through there.
There's some jet boats through there.
Jet boats. I think that's on our list. Charter some jet boats, and we'll take an armada of jet boats through Hell's Canyon.
We did drive down there that one time, but not realizing, there's not really a way out. So it was like 3 hours in, and then, we got to turn around. It was 3 hours back out of there.
Yeah, the road just
narrow,
pretty much ends
there. Yeah. There was a dam down there, and that was it.
That was it. That was the end of our attempt to follow the flood. So, but then we circled around, and we came up at the north end of the mouth of Hell's Canyon. And just north of the mouth there of Hell's Canyon is the Tammany Bar, which is so interesting. And that's where we're headed to right now. So I think I'll do a share screen. Yeah, I really like this photo. This is one of my favorite photographs, I have to confess. I mean, you just got to try to wrap your head around the water flow that was transporting these two guys.
So what's the material that the boulders are sitting on and the trees are growing out of? Is that soil, or is it? No,
that's
gravel?
bedrock.
Bedrock?
I think this is bedrock right here. It's pretty fine grained. If you look up here, you see there's some pretty gravelly stuff.
Yeah.
Because you got to bear in mind that as this canyon was downcut, there are patches where there is exposed bedrock that has been scoured and sculpted. And then there are other places where, the alluvial material has been dumped.
Yeah. So those trees are just growing out of cracks in the bedrock, I
I
guess?
think so, yeah.
Okay,
I think
all right.
places where there's pockets of soil that have formed. And I think this right here in the foreground is.
What's the composition of the bedrock?
I think it's mostly basalt. I think under most of the Snake River Plain, I believe, is underlain by basalt.
So I was going to say I wasn't 100% sure, but I think, yeah, a large majority of it is.
Yeah, because it's all connected with the formation of, the mantle hotspot that now lies under Yellowstone, as we talked about.
That makes sense.
And so, yeah, here's the canyon itself. Looking down the canyon.
Yep, so that's where we left off. That was right below Shoshone Falls.
Right below Shoshone Falls.
Yep.
Okay, so then back in 87, Harold Mald, who did some of the really preliminary work on the Bonneville Flood, demonstrating that it was catastrophic, wrote an article late 60s, and then this was a follow-up one about 20 years later, which was in the Geological Society of America Centennial Field Guide. He says Shoshone Falls is on the Snake River about 4 miles northeast of the city of Twin Falls, near the midpoint of a chaotically eroded 14-mile section of the Snake River Canyon. Shoshone Falls was an important landmark in the geological exploration of the West, but evidence that the falls are a relic of a great Pleistocene flood has been recognized only recently. As now understood, Shoshone Falls and its associated erosional features were formed at a time of catastrophic outflow from Lake Bonneville about 15,000 years ago. About 15,000 years ago could potentially put it at that 14,600 to 14,700 year ago. Meltwater Pulse 1A. I'd like to see more accurate dating, more comprehensive dating of the flood, because I'm particularly interested in the connection between the Bonneville flood and the Missoula flood, which I'm going to, and I think Brad and I had discussed this and agreed that we should rename the Missoula floods the Cordilleran floods, as will become obvious once we get discussing them. So yeah, here's a picture of Shoshone Falls. And so again, what we just saw with Canyon Lake Gorge, this is just a larger version of it. So you had the plucking and quarrying that leaves this recessional cataract. So the recessional cataract is a relic of the flood. As long as the floodwaters are, pouring down and eroding, the cataract formation will extend upstream. And then as soon as the floodwaters stop, then the recessional cataract will stabilize. And that's essentially what we see right here. And what we were seeing in the video of Canyon Lake Gorge, which is interesting because this does Canyon Lake Gorge really does confirm, because there we have a modern example of witnessing a catastrophic flood, even though on a smaller scale, of course, the concept, the principles are the same. And again, that scale invariant phenomena plays a role, because we saw, the same features there. I was looking at some photographs online, and there was one picture, and I'll find it on the break, from Canyon Lake Gorge of some beautifully imbricate boulders stacked up. And by the way, several of the comments that I have seen that have referenced scale invariance have referred to scale and variant. So it's scale invariant, meaning invariant. It's not variable. It doesn't vary. It's not variant, it's invariant. So it doesn't change regardless of the scale. So just to clarify that for a few folks out there that misheard and thought I was saying scale and variant. I was not saying that. Okay, let's go on here. Shoshone Falls is at the junction of two channels of the Bonneville Flood, one along the narrow Snake River Canyon and the other on the upland a few miles north. Where the channels joined, flood erosion produced a chaotically eroded landscape of cataracts, spillway alcoves, and scabland, and the original canyon was greatly enlarged. So let's take a look here at this map. Here's Shoshone Falls, and look, this is the chaotic landscape that it's referring to right here. And so we have a number of these. You'll see Box Canyon Alcove. You'll see Devil's Corral. There's the falls. And then as you go down river, which the river is flowing to the west, you have the Blue Lakes Alcove. So in order to create this alcove, this is showing you that there's water running over the upland. And then it's flowing back into the main channel. And as it's flowing back into the main channel, it's eating a canyon into the sidewall of the main canyon. And then it terminates with this creation of this alcove here. Let's go on to see what he says here. The main cataracts begin 2.5 miles above Shoshone Falls, where the canyon is 230 feet deep. So that would be right up here. You see each of these squares is a mile. So if you go 1 mile, 2 miles, 2.5 miles, this is where it's talking about the chaotic terrain, all of this in here. These cataracts, called the Twin Falls, plunge 157 feet from basalt to massive outcrops of silicic volcanic rocks in the lower story of the canyon. There we go. The Snake then drops another 212 feet to the threshold of Pillar Falls, 1.5 miles downstream. Pillar Falls, although only 20 feet high, is surrounded by Scabland crags that reach 175 feet. I'm going to stop the share there for a second and see if we can't get this on the National Map Database.
There we go.
There we go. Oh yeah, so here's this chaotic terrain that it's talking about. He goes on to say the main cataracts begin 2.5 miles above Shoshone Falls. And we found that Shoshone Falls is right here. Now let's go to the, yeah, look at that. That's chaotic terrain there.
Very chaotic. Yeah.
Tortured.
Yeah, and you're right. With that, it's easy to see that it must have been water flowing over out of the channel.
Yeah.
Outside of the channel and then falling into it that had to make those alcoves and other cataracts off to the side.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Let's see. Look, we have another re-entrance right here. Come on into focus there. It's trying to come into focus.
Yeah.
And we'll just look at the...
It's amazing how clean some of the sides of that canyon are. There's very little, later erosional features that you expect to see in a canyon like that are.
No, I would venture to say that if you went back and looked at the canyon 12 or 13,000 years ago, it wouldn't look a whole lot different than it does now.
It's very young. It is.
Yeah. It's a young feature. Let's see. I'm going to do a search for Mallard Gorge. Here we go. There it is.
There for sure.
So I think I've got some photos of Mallard Gorge coming up. Now check this out. Here you can actually see the erosion coming in, undoubtedly coming as a more of a sheet, and then it becomes concentrated. And I'm very interested in the relationship between the formation of Mallard Gorge and the Snake River Canyon, because the Mallard Gorge couldn't have been down cut until after the canyon had been down cut.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
And it seems like it hit a crack right there. The water did, and started cutting it real deep.
Right
there
here.
At the end. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Wow.
We got another devil home there. It's Devil's Wash Bowl.
Of course. Wow.
Yeah. We've met the devil multiple times on these tours.
No doubt.
It seems to explore interesting geology. You have to go to the Devil's Place quite a few times, right?
Well, once you get into the symbolism of the devil, which I don't know if this is going to be the appropriate venue for that. But then again, why not?
Yeah.
I think our listeners can handle it.
I think so.
I think so, yeah. But, typically, if you're of a certain religious affiliation, you think of the devil as a literal, being. But if you are a student of universal, mythology, the archetypal imagery of various symbols, you realize that there's many variations on the devil. And you also realize that there's a cosmic dimension to the whole meaning behind the symbolism, which would be a very interesting subject to explore, and we will actually.
Yeah.
And so where is this Devil's Wash Bowl?
Yeah.
I think we can, if this will come in.
Yeah, that's it.
With some clarity. This is it right here.
No,
man,
up at the.
Oh, no, this is it
plunge,
right
there
here.
You go. Yeah, the plunge pool there at the cataract.
The plunge pool, yeah.
It's got to be associated with those things over there.
Yeah.
We got to go check it out. I'm going to go into that punch bowl.
Well, the day we were there, there was a sign up.
You to a rock off.
The day that Brad and I were there was a sign posted that, this happens all the time. But the day that we were there, it was a sign up that said that it was the devil's day off.
He's off. That's right.
So he was.
Don't expect to find him. He's off today, right?
He took the day off. So
you don't have to bathe every day.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's see here. We'll go now to back to Google Maps. You guys have disappeared on me.
Yeah, I think that must be an area they don't have the good coverage yet. Haven't updated all the latest data, so maybe that's why it's coming in slow and not quite as clear as any of the other places we've been looking.
Okay, so Mallard Gorge was to the west. Oh, is this the Bruneau River coming in here? Now that's interesting. Because the Bruneau River looks like a catastrophically produced flood feature.
Yeah, it's basically right when the snake heads north. So
right.
We're not far enough west yet.
All right, here we go. Let's zoom on out. There we are. We're back to Matt. Let's zoom out so we can see the big picture here. All right, so here's Twin Falls. And there's Shoshone Falls. So the flood pathway, this is the flood pathway. We see evidence here that there was actually floods flowing over the upland surface, re-entering the canyon. We see another cataract right here. There's another.
You showed some pictures from there last time. The Perrine is that big arch bridge there.
Yeah. We'll when we get back to the pictures, we'll see that coming up. So there's
when you backed out, we did see the Bruneau Gorge there. I don't know if we're there yet, but yeah, I did see it briefly.
Look at all those country clubs they got in that canyon. I keep seeing Blue River Country Club, and they're all down there inside of that catastrophic flow. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Probably have no idea.
So there's Mallard Gorge, and the aerial photograph that I have that'll be coming up. I believe we were flying along the river, and it was this section right in here that you'll be seeing in a upcoming photograph. But yeah, so here's Mallard Gorge, and let's zoom on in, and here's the Devil's. What was it, Brad? The Devil's what?
Wash bowl.
Wash bowl. Yeah. The Devil's Punch Bowl is up just outside of Spokane.
So that's a spring right there?
Yeah, there's a spring there.
Huh.
Yeah.
So the catastrophic flow coming in cut down into the bedrock enough to dig a spring out. Or maybe there was one there already.
Well, look right here. Thousand Springs State Park.
Okay, yeah. Lots of springs.
A lot of springs. And at the Hagerman fossil beds, right in here, you'll see a picture. I have one coming up.
Yeah.
There are springs discharging from the wall of the canyon. There's all along here.
Wow.
Well, because you got the Lost River, and with all the basalt, the water just goes down in and then comes out other places, right? So, yeah, there's a big wall of falls there overlooking the Hagerman fossil beds.
What kind of fossils?
Well, we didn't make it to the fossil beds.
Oh,
I think
okay.
they're...
Yeah, I don't recall. It's been 20 years. Look it up.
Yeah. It's not. I don't think it's not Pleistocene megafaunal.
Right. It's probably, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's
like
not.
what we have here is Cretaceous stuff.
Yeah, that would. Okay, so we've seen the maps. I'll zoom back out again. Let's just let people see how the river winds around. You've got this kind of higher topography here to the west, and the river is just skirting the perimeter of that. Here you can see it's excavated quite a bit to create the canyon. It comes around, winds around, and I'm going to back on out. And yeah, then it heads north out onto the plain, and it doesn't have a lot of obvious erosion there.
But is that plain, you think, was that all once basically a sheet flood rolling over that?
I think it was submerged. And then the water focuses through here, and then you get into Hell's Canyon up here. And undoubtedly Hell's Canyon was substantially deepened by the floodwaters coming through here. Oh, and look here. There's He Devil. And we'll keep coming, forming the border of Idaho and Oregon. And then it comes out right here at Lewiston and Clarkston. And right here is Tammany Bar, next to Hell's Gate State Park. So that's the map. We're following that. And then once it hits the Snake, the Snake turns right here at the convergence of the Snake and the Clearwater coming in from the east, substantially augmenting the flow of the Snake. And then you have that river coming around this way, and it ultimately is going to end up flowing into the Columbia over here by the Tri-Cities area, which is going to be an area we get to on our Scablands tour. We're going to try to get up here onto the west side of Wallula Gap. So
we're right in the corner there, southeast Washington, northeast Oregon, and then the far west of Idaho. So we've kind of been right where those three state lines come together there around Hell's Canyon and the Snake River.
Right. So backing out, you can see the Snake coming through this way, coming down here, down through Hell's Canyon, right here. Sorry, it was right there. We go. Coming down, and then so you can follow the route. So that itself is a really awesome trip. We've done that where we started in Salt Lake City and followed the floods all the way up to where as far as we could get in Hell's Canyon. And then you got to leapfrog around. But we've actually picked up this, the northern area up here at Hell's Gate several times now, but have come in from the north and have included that as part of the Scablands trip. Because it's a long way around to get from the south end of Hell's Canyon to the north.
Yeah, and this is that feature, that giant feature, which you were telling us about was a possible impact.
The arc.
And that the plate had moved. That's that big plane
Yeah.
that you were saying might have been submerged. When we were zoomed in on it, I didn't know that was what we were looking at.
So
We're due a break before you show some other on-site pictures if you're ready for one.
sure, I could get a drink to wet my whistle, and then we'll look at some more slides and photos.
All right.
What we've
Sounds
just been
good.
looking at on the maps.
Photographic fun.
I'll be right back.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone, to Cosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. We want to mention again cbdfromthegods.com. And Randall, do you have any reports on CBD? What's going on with them?
Oh, I'm still doing it, still sleeping better. And yeah, going to have, I've got the word that they're going to be coming out with some gummies. And I have never tried gummies. But I guess that's an established way of imbibing CBD, right? Gummies, you like eat them like candy, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
I think so. Yeah.
Just be more of a slow release, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of the purpose.
Well, hopefully by the next episode, I will have been trying the gummies and we'll be able to give a report. There have been some issues with one of the earlier runs I'll mention in case people have run into this, of buying some of the salve, because apparently in the run, the company that produced the containers for the salve, it's almost like a little mortise and tenon kind of link in there that didn't quite seat properly. And so the lids apparently Mike Robertson has said that they've fixed that problem, but there was a problem getting some of the lids off of the salve. So hopefully if you've had any of those and had to struggle to get a lid off, that problem has been fixed. So,
Right on.
but they're a small company and they're dedicated to doing it right. But hey, any of us who have ever launched businesses, I know you guys have, there's some things you have to deal with that come up.
Yep, you got to work through those things.
They have definitely expressed that any issues that people have, let them know, and they will get right on it and do their best to correct the problem if there is one. But yeah, you can't expect any startup that's going to not encounter problems. The question is how do they respond to the problems?
Right.
If problems arise. But at this point, that's pretty much the only issue I've had is of the 4 salves, 2 of them opened fine that we've gotten. I think 4 or 5, so maybe 5 now because Julie uses most of the salve, but for her wrists and her hands, because for her years of doing electrical work, she's got arthritis in her hands, and is finding tremendous relief from the salve. But 2 of the 4 or 5 jars of salve that we've gotten were tricky to open. The others were fine. So that's not going to be an ongoing thing. I think it's already been addressed and corrected. But looking forward to getting my first shipment of gummies and giving them a try. And of course, it's not the intoxicating. There's no the amounts of THC in there are so minuscule that it's not intoxicating. That's why it's legal.
It's medicinal.
Medicinal, exactly.
Yeah, so check them out, cbdfromthegods.com. There is a promo code RC Ships Free. So if you order something and put that in, you'll get free shipping. And yeah, let them know, give them some feedback so they can continue to improve their products. And we thank everybody who has patronized CBD from the gods. So where are we going from here?
Well, at some point we need to go to Mars.
Yep.
We obviously
stop by the moon on the way there.
Yeah, we need to stop by the moon first.
I was thinking we'd hit the moon on the way back.
No, come on, Randall.
Well, with Perseverance just landing successfully and getting a whole new slew of pictures, I'm excited to see what we see and what we learn. But
Yeah.
God, Mars has some interesting things going on. There's some great stories there.
Yeah.
And
We're going to be looking for fossils. So I can't wait to see what they find.
something. Obviously, one of the things that really interests me about Mars is the megafloods, and how in the world you explain megafloods on Mars is going to be is an interesting question that obviously hasn't been resolved at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and megaflood evidence that we can still see, right? Because
and after we've toured, megaflood topography here on Earth, we'll be looking at Mars, and you'll see things that look totally familiar. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
check it out.
So I have a question about Mars and all this water that was on Mars. Where did it go? How did it go? Did it evaporate? No, seriously.
Yeah,
did it evaporate into space? Was it stripped off by solar winds? What were the mechanisms for all this water leaving Mars?
Well, from what I don't have the answers, but what I've read is they think that a very long time ago, Mars lost its magnetic field. And its magnetic field protected its atmosphere from solar wind. And the atmosphere starts to get stripped away. Pressure drops, water boils off, and then you just lose it. But they think that was like 1 billion years ago or more. That's the idea. That's what I've read. So I don't know what there might be more current thinking on it. But that's why I was pointing out with Randall was he's saying you see megaflood features. And it's interesting that they look so fresh because according to standard model science, Mars's oceans should have been gone 1 billion years ago. That if any standing water on Mars should have been long gone. And so it has an atmosphere and massive dust storms. So it should have erased the evidence of those floods a long time ago.
But there's
stuff.
What, evidence of subsurface ice too?
Yeah, there's probably still water there, but it's trapped underground or it's frozen at the poles. There are seasons enough on Mars to where it seems to leach out of the ground in some places sometimes, but it isn't much. So the question he's asking is, where do you get the megafloods on Mars where you can still see the evidence? And that's a good question. Where did the water come from and where has it gone since then? Yeah.
Those are the two fundamental questions. Where did it come from and where did it go?
That's right.
But we're not going to get into that tonight, Mike, because the question you just asked was, well, let's drop the Bonneville Flood. We'll shift over, finish this episode on Mars, and we'll take the next couple of episodes. And
hey, you brought up Mars, okay?
I admit I did. I brought up Mars, and I was realizing I brought it up. God, I just made a big mistake.
Well, didn't Elon Musk just say they're going to send humans there in the next 5 years by 2026? I think I just saw that today or yesterday.
Yeah,
so
he has a very
it better be a geologist and
very optimistic timeline for
group.
I would say so.
We should not be spending Bitcoin in space, guys.
5 years. Now, is that a Jack Black quote too?
No.
That's a meta joke right there.
Yeah. Just
all right,
forget it.
Sorry, Randall. Let's go. Bonneville Floods. Where are we going?
Okay. Yes, back to the Bonneville Flood.
Or we can stay at the moon.
Were you going to at least flash Bruneau Canyon, Bruneau Dunes, or we got a lot to cover at Tammany Bar, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bruneau Canyon, though, let's see. I don't have the Bruneau Canyon in this particular slideshow that I have open right now.
Well, if you go back to the maps, it will just flash down there. We can find it fast enough.
Okay. Well, yeah, because that's a whole interesting story in itself.
For sure.
Clearly, you had catastrophic flooding
coming out of Nevada deserts.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and share screen. All right. Snake River up here. Notice Snake River birds of prey area. And the Bruneau dunes are right in here. They're pretty impressive dunes. And if you look here, here's the Bruneau River. And I'm going to zoom in. And the Bruneau River, it reminded me of the Gorge of the Little Colorado. I mean, it is deep and it is steep.
Definitely.
And it's flowing. Yeah, I mean, look at this. It's flowing out of this mountain range here in northern Idaho. And that, look at there. Let's see. What is the name of that mountain range? Look, there's a mountain there called the Matterhorn, so suggests that it was some glaciation going on there. But clearly you can see that the Bruneau River heads in this mountain range right here in northern Nevada. And yeah, once you get down here, it's quite narrow. And so you can see that the Bruneau River has cut a canyon flowing north, and then where it shallows out here, it's left a relic field, a massive relic field of sand. And I don't have, I'll try to pull up those pictures. And if you have some, Brad, we could pull those up for the next episode, because that would be interesting to show that. I don't have them.
Yeah, I got a couple, not a lot.
Uh-huh. Well,
but yeah, the dunes are like 400 feet high, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're like the largest ones on the continent.
Yeah.
And the gorge is 600 feet deep, just gashed into that desert. But yeah, that's one of those where you're out in a, like a ballistics testing range. So you got to pass by the signs that say, bombs may drop from the sky kind of thing. Okay, we're going anyway.
Risk. You may get, yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that gunnery range.
Do they think the dunes are wind formed?
Well, they're certainly being modified by wind, but
Yeah.
they may not have been initially. They had to, I mean, how do you create a lot of sand? Well, it's the end product of when you take silicic boulders, you take boulders of silicate rocks, and you start busting them up, that are formed of quartzite.
Yeah.
Busting them up. The end product is sand.
Right.
So I haven't seen the studies, but I'd assume that if you looked at the lithology of the sand, it would be the same as the lithology of the rocks eroded in the down cutting of the Bruneau Gorge.
Yeah, I guess what I was asking is, were they formed by water, or is the sand deposited there by water, and then the wind has changed it into dunes? I guess is the
yes,
is the question.
that's what
Okay.
I would think.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do another share screen here. Look at this. I guess you call that sandboarding.
Sandboarding.
Apparently.
So people are out there sandboarding. That looks kind of fun. Oh, now look at this.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we were there, I don't recall there being hardly any people.
No, there wasn't.
We were like the only ones there, but this was how long ago? Quite a while.
Yep, 2000.
21 years ago. Okay, so there you can see one of the dunes.
So if you got rushing water coming through that gorge, and then you've got a bigger, broader, slower moving mass of water that's starting to channelize up into Hell's Canyon too, then it's gonna slow down and drop its load and sit a lot of that sand right there where it hit the Snake River.
Yeah. So I'd like to see studies about some of the most recent flooding events in the Bruneau Canyon. Yeah, we just visited it. We didn't do a lot of research or field work there. We crossed the gunnery range. We had somebody with us, I think, who was trying to get us to turn back.
Yeah, same scared guy.
Oh, the same scared guy? Yeah, we had a
Yep.
Oh,
third different trip, same scared guy.
Right, let's see. It was mountain lions. It was never mind.
We just kind of happened upon it. And it was like, well, yeah, you've got a paper about that. It was the end of the day. So I was like, okay, well, let's see if we can get down there before, dark. So basically we were there at sunset and
Got
right
and
back
you
out
remember
of
what
there.
was so impressive about it? You remember? Well, you could see the route of the canyon, and then above the canyon, the clouds,
Yeah.
like serpentine, and you could see the clouds where the vapor was condensing above the apparently cool air arising from the canyon. So there was a cloud that mirrored the shape of the canyon.
Oh
Right.
man, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep.
As above, so below.
Yeah, there
That's
we go.
great.
That was interesting. Absolutely was. All right, let's get back to the Bonneville Flood. So I'll do a share screen again. We'll get back there to where we were. There we are. This is actually Shoshone Falls at low water. But what's interesting about this is you can really now see the nature of the bedrock. And I mean, look at the scouring that has taken place. The rubble piles that have been left, the plucking, and here you can actually kind of see the alcove shape, the horseshoe shape, which is so typical. And this is looking down Gorge. This was what, by the Prime Bridge, I believe?
I think so.
Okay, view into the Snake River Canyon near Twin Falls, Idaho. The canyon as it exists today is largely a product of the Bonneville Cataclysm, which here filled the canyon and completely overtopped the brim at its peak discharge. But at the time when it was overtopping the brim, the canyon was undoubtedly not as deep as it is now. Because what happens is once that overland flow gets captured into the canyon or into the channel, then all of the erosive action is focused into that channel. And then it proceeds to accelerate the down cutting. There it is. There's the Perrine Bridge. So traditionally, when we make this route, we bungee jump off the bridge. Sometimes we'll do it without the cord, sometimes with.
Randall screams like a little girl.
Don't know, but they do bungee jumping on the bridge, right? Wasn't this?
Yeah,
I gotta
I'm
try
pretty sure
that.
they do.
I
Yeah,
can
I know
see
they do the one
where I
over the higher one in West Virginia there, the New River Gorge.
But I tell you what, walking across this bridge, though, it's you get kind of giddy looking down into the canyon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a gust of wind will make you grab on.
Yeah, it will. All right, here's that section just west of Mallard Gorge that I was referring to. So here, beautiful example of an underfit river. And you have the Snake River flowing within a giant Bonneville Flood channel. Textbook example of an underfit stream. And here's the stats on the matter. The modern Snake River annual average discharge is 56,900 cubic feet per second. That's this down here. The highest recorded historical peak flow was 195,000 cubic feet per second on June 18th, 1974. Estimated peak discharge of the Bonneville Flood, 35 to 40 million cubic feet per second. So the Bonneville Flood was substantially bigger. 1, 2, 3, and let's see, if I divide by the average annual discharge, the Bonneville Flood was essentially 700 times greater than the modern river. So if you want to call it the prehistoric Bonneville River, which is as good a name as any for it, which flowed temporarily I've seen estimates now that have ranged for the duration of the Bonneville Flood from several weeks up to a year. And obviously, the lower the amount of time allocated for the flooding, the greater the peak discharges have to be. Because it's the same volume of water calculated. You can just take the surface area of Lake Bonneville at its high water mark, and then it is minus 300 foot level at the next lower shoreline, that volume can be calculated. Okay, so now does that volume take a month to discharge completely or a year? So if it discharges in a month, then the peak flows are going to obviously be 10 or 12 times greater than if it takes a whole year. But what you can see here is that based upon this range, based upon the modern river, then the peak of the Bonneville River, whenever this flood happened 14 or 15,000 years ago, was 700 times greater. So that's an impressive flow of water. But interestingly, you still have to go up a whole nother order of magnitude to get up to the Scablands flood discharges. And here's an example of some of the many springs that you see discharging from the walls of the canyon. And this is a giant boulder bar at Swan Falls along the Snake River, southern Idaho. So we could jump back and look on the map where Swan Falls is, but it's along the river. That's an impressive boulder field. Now, basically, I mean, what you got to bear in mind is this is the sediment load being carried in the Bonneville Flood. So what you have here is a basin, a widening of the canyon. And so the widening of the canyon means the water flow is slowing down. So as it slows down, it starts depositing its sediment. The larger sediment gets deposited first. And so you see that this is basically an opening at the mouth of a constriction. And so the water is speeding up and ripping out the bedrock from the canyon walls and the canyon floor. And this material is being washed down in the flood. And then when the flood opens out into a basin and slows down, it dumps its sedimentary load. So you can see here, this is a pretty impressive load of sediment in this field.
Yeah, and they're pretty rounded too, which doesn't that imply that they were carried a ways?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Speaking of rounding.
Yeah.
Look at this monster right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the Swan Falls boulder field. It's
Isn't this the picture that one of the guys from Pagosa Springs copied?
Yes.
That was fantastic.
That's right.
Yeah.
He found that exact spot and wore that exact same shirt. Took a
okay,
picture.
so we need to break. We need that.
Yep.
I mean, because look, this to me demonstrates the dedication of some folks to
Yeah.
and I think it would serve as a good example to everyone listening.
I think it was Dan.
Yeah.
I was going to say Daniel. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where would I have that?
I know he sent it to you.
Resend them, Dan. Resend us that stuff. Yeah, he found like 3 or 4 places. Recreated a picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's one of those alcoves that you were showing before on the terrain maps, several miles back upstream to this. So that could have been part of what this debris is from, or any collection. Like you said, those are obviously really rounded, but not spherical.
Right.
So they have traveled some ways, but I think a good bit of them could have come from that nearby alcove.
Right.
But that's just, speculation.
Just speculation, but yeah, a lot of them could. And of course, lithological studies would disclose that, if you identify the various kinds of rock. So this is a pretty impressive formation here when you look at it. And it's the kind of thing that you really need to experience it firsthand in the field to really begin to get some inkling of the kind of power that we're talking about here.
Is that Scale Bradway out there, or is that somebody else?
I was gonna say that's our buddy Wilbur out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because basically he's the one that took the picture of us that we just saw.
Ah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So he was
That's
out there.
amazing. That shows you the scale. Yeah. Wow.
Oh yeah, because he's up there taking a picture of us. We're standing down here, taking a picture of him.
Yep.
There we are. Yeah. So he's taking this picture.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know who took that picture. And as you just go through following the route, you see these just huge mounds of rubble strewn in the pathway of the flood, with this ripped up basalt, and then, of course, the finer grained material. So in some cases, like if you go back here, any finer stuff, picture, in order to understand the sequence here, the bigger stuff is dropped. If finer stuff is draped down, or this stuff gets buried, but the water continues to flow and it's not filled to capacity with sediment, it'll wash away the sediment. I mean, that's kind of like the assumption when we were looking at some of the boulder fields up there in Virginia and Pennsylvania, was that where you see there's no finer material in there, it's just boulders. The idea being that the finer material was flushed out and left just the rocks and remaining. But here, the finer material has not been flushed out. So this was probably a deposit that came in the waning flood stages. Here's downriver from Perrine Bridge, and I'm calling attention. Note the large amount of flood debris that has been washed up against the face of the opposite cliff. You see that? That's not talus in the normal sense, where, talus is the rubble that forms at the base of the cliff as the upper part of the cliff erodes back and material falls. But the first thing you see here is that the cliff is pretty much vertical above this wash-up debris here, and has not, in order to have this amount of debris from gravity in place talus, the cliff would have had to have receded basically an equivalent amount. This is the material that is being carried in the floodwaters. And undoubtedly, notice the flat floor. There's probably 200 feet of alluvium covering the valley floor that the river is now flowing on. Well, let's see, this might be a bedrock outcrop right here. So maybe it's only 100 feet in some of the deeper places, but there's undoubtedly a lot of alluvium forming the valley floor that the modern river is dissecting that alluvium. And so you can kind of picture in a cross section that, this stuff would continue on down. And
it drops it at the edge there because the water flow is slower at the edges? Is that?
Yes, there's more friction along the edges.
Right,
So,
okay.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more low key, but nonetheless, it's important evidence because it is a flood deposit. This is called a boulder lag. And a boulder lag is where you have a bar or a fan or a delta, and its surface is mantled with a lot of boulders. And I'm not sure of the lithology here, but this looks very distinct from the material up here forming the walls of the canyon. And there's the map of the bar that we were just on. So you can see it's 3 or 4 miles long. Each of these squares is a mile. So this is where we were taking those photographs of the large boulder deposits. And here's some back flood silts. This is the stuff that washes up into the tributary valleys and into if there's a large basin, it's a stilling basin. So, like I said, in the first instance, as the floodwaters are slowing down, the larger material deposits first, and then the finer material is carried down current until it finally, you get some water is slowing down where it's almost at a standstill, and then you get the finer sediment. And so this is one end of the deposit would be the large boulders, and the other end would be this kind of stuff, fine-grained stuff, silty, sandy stuff. And that's our buddy Wilbur there for scale. And that brings us up to Tammany Bar, which is where the Bonneville Flood met the Great Missoula Flood. At Lewiston, Idaho on the left, Clarkston on the right, and this is the bar in question right here. This is Tammany Bar. You see it's on the inside bend of this of the river here, of this meander. And notice right in here that there's a gravel operation. So here is where the Bonneville flood deposited a lot of material. But what's interesting about this particularly is because the Missoula flood also deposited a lot of material here on this bar. So this bar is composed of both. And the material is very distinct. So what we're going to do is we're going to, there's the gravel pit. Here's a map showing Tammany Creek coming in from the east. And then right in this bend is the bar. It's this feature right here. It's just Hell's Canyon. Hell's Gate is just south of the map here. And this is the northern egress of Hell's Canyon. And then Lewiston and Idaho. Lewiston is here and Clarkston is over here. We're looking at the south margins of those two towns. So right here is the bar that was deposited. So the flood, picture this now, the Bonneville flood is flowing this way, and it's flowing downstream. And you'll see that in the deposits. The Missoula floods are coming from this direction. So they're actually flowing upstream. So when the Missoula floods were deposited, the direction of the Snake River was temporarily reversed. So we'll come to that. Let's see. So now, so there's the gravel pit. And on one of our trips, we found an area up here where we could get a view from of Tammany Bar across the river from the bluff. I think we have, okay, so here's a picture we've taken from that bluff. And the gravel pit is down here. You can see there's actually an excavated exposed wall right here. And if you look very careful, you see that there's a grayer area and then there's a more buff. It's topped by a more buff colored. And so this whole flat area here is part of the Tammany Bar. And then Tammany Creek flows in from this way, from the east. And there are backflood deposits all up in this valley of Tammany Creek, but I've not been able to yet identify them because you probably got intermingled Bonneville backflood deposits and Missoula deposits. So we're going to take a closer look at this outcrop right here. All right. You can see there how distinct the deposits are. So the darker gray is Bonneville. So it's stuff being washed along the Snake River. The buff-colored stuff is finer grained silts that are being backwashed by the Missoula flood. And then the whole thing is capped off with about a 5-foot thick layer of loess up here on the top. See, we'll take a closer look. Here we go. Now check this out. You can see in here, you can actually see the rhythmical layers of the Missoula backwashes coming in surges and leaving these layers of mud. You have to see, we're right at the place here where the backwash of the Missoula flood has pretty much reached its limit and where it's now reversing directions to flow back. And you see, look right here, you see that this tipping is tipping to the left. That's downstream, right? So here, this stuff is the Missoula flood material flowing back to the north. Here, you've got the stuff is flowing in, and here, up here, it's flowing out. So, and then down, and then it's capping the Bonneville. So all of this coarse stuff here, and this is to me really intriguing, the large clasts or large boulders and stuff that are up here at the top. And you notice that there's a lot of different rock types there. So this whole gravel quarry here to me would be worth probably doing a master's thesis on, because the story here is so damn interesting and it hasn't been deciphered. I know that Jim O'Connor has written a paper on this maybe I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years ago that I read. I've kind of forgotten what his conclusions were. I would need to reread it. But it doesn't seem like there's any evidence of a long span of time separating the deposition of the Missoula silts from the Bonneville gravels below. Because it doesn't take long, even, of course, we'd have to know how much rainfall was falling on this. But that's an important question in my mind, is what is the chronology here? How much time separated the deposition of these silts from the deposition of the Bonneville gravels below? And then on top, you've got this thick layer of loess. Now, this is stuff that after there was this is a different material than the Missoula silts. This is loess. And one of the things that makes loess characteristic of loess is its vertical structure, which is clearly visible in this image here. I mean, notice you see the verticality in this, and then you've got the Missoula silts running horizontal beneath it. Well, this is stuff that came out of the atmosphere at some period after the deposition of the Missoula flood silts. And given that there's no evidence here to me of any kind of vegetation growing here, because the loess coming out of the atmosphere should essentially entomb anything that was there. And you'll notice even in a semi-arid environment with only 15, inches of rainfall per year or whatever, you've already got vegetation growing up here. Now it suggests to me that the deposition of the loess must have been very shortly after the last flooding, Missoula flood evidence occurred. And again, the question is how much time elapsed between the deposition of the loess and the deposition of the Missoula flood silts, just like how much time elapsed between the deposition of the Missoula flood silts and the Bonneville bouldery gravel.
I'm curious to know how first off, how deep is the loess? It looks like 6 feet, 5 feet deep.
5 to 6. I mean, okay. We've got Mark Lamonto here, who is about 6'5".
And you look at the depth of that, and that covers what, hundreds of square miles?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it covers.
So how much? And that stuff is floating in the atmosphere. That was one hell of a sandstorm. How was that? Again, what was the mechanism for that? That's just astounding to me. That all this stuff is just somehow blown up and then floated down.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is stuff coming out of the atmosphere, and I've characterized, and I'm not going to make any final definitive conclusions about the origin of loess because it's very controversial. But to me, the best way to explain all of and at some point we should actually it would be worthwhile to devote an episode to just the discussion of this mysterious stuff. It seems to me that the best explanation, it kind of covers all the bases, because the controversy has been, is it wind deposited or water deposited or some combination of both? And I'm in the combination of both camp, because I think that the best explanation that I've seen or come up with is that it essentially is deposited as a rain of mud. So, and the thing is that there's no, it would be premature to conclude that the loess didn't start coming down out of the atmosphere until the flooding was over. Obviously, if you had a rain of mud coming out of the atmosphere during the flood, it's going to just get incorporated into these sediments and you're not going to see it. So it may have been actually going on longer than it took to deposit this 5 or 6 feet that you see here. But it is clear to me, though, that if there's 5 or 6 feet of material that's coming out of the atmosphere, that would have had a major impact on the atmosphere itself.
Is it possible that the loess actually contributed to all of that sediment that's associated with the Missoula flood, but it was hitting the surface of water first and then being laid down underwater? Well, and when the water was gone, it left the vertical structure?
The thing is that the Missoula flood, their water has traversed over a couple of 100 miles of land. So it's been fully charged with sediment.
It's just interesting how similar it looks.
Yeah, it's very similar in color. So I would think that, yeah, you've probably got, when you look at this stuff, you got to realize that this is not like a flood of water. It's really almost like more like a flood of mud. A real, almost like surging slurries of flood water, of mud. And that's probably what's creating the loess coming out. So you've got the atmosphere is supercharged with this stuff. And then it's all swirling in these tremendously deep, powerful floods. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a clear picture on exactly what happened here. That's what I was saying. I'd like to have 6 months to just go. What I'd like to do, is because this gravel pit here is an ongoing operation, and they're constantly uncovering new sections. And I would just like to go and spend some time there because it's changed. Like this, in fact, this outcrop here doesn't exist anymore. We photographed this. This was just an interim here, like a section, although what's now being exposed is just as interesting in its own way. But here, the whole story is splayed out in such a dramatic fashion. Another question is was there Missoula floods before the Bonneville? I mean, if you were to drill down to bedrock here, what would you find? I don't know. But I bet you there's some geologists on staff or consulting geologists that have looked at this, not so much from the standpoint of it being a flood deposit, but just to determine what's here, what kind of rock, what kind of sand, because it's a commercial quarrying operation. They're selectively segregating out the different kinds of materials and so forth. If you look in their yard, they've got multiple piles of the different types of rock and sand and so forth that they've separated out from the massive deposits you see here. Now this is a great one for showing the sweeping foresets. And again, foresets like this are a paleocurrent indicator as they dip down or tilt downward in the down current direction. So you're seeing huge sweeping currents supercharged with sediment that are sweeping in from the right and probably reaching about almost their limit near this area. I don't know what the furthermost limit of Bonneville sediments are, but it's not going to be much further north than we're seeing right here. And then look up at the top, you see the very buff colored, very distinct. Nobody would have any trouble distinguishing between those two deposits.
So does the angle of those sweeps that we can see, does that tell you anything about speed of current flow or?
Yeah, generally the gentler the current flow, the more horizontal.
More horizontal
the beds are going to be.
Yeah, those are pretty steep. Yeah,
they are.
So it was still moving quick there. At least the Bonneville flood was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think we've also talked before about how strange it is that all the biggest boulders and stuff are right at the top of the Bonneville flood material.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, I came up with some harebrained theory that you shot down immediately.
That's right.
You don't remember?
Yeah. What was your theory again?
I don't know.
Just so for a moment of levity here.
I was just wondering if there was a possibility that the two floods happened simultaneously. But
no, because that's what I've wondered. I mean, that's why I'm asking how much span of time separated the deposition of the two.
Yeah.
The two very distinct types there. And what it would seem is obviously the final surge of the Bonneville flood, again, maybe, you may have had a back, like a pond, a temporary ponding that formed.
Yeah.
And maybe, studies of the canyon upstream from this point would disclose where that might have been. But let's suppose you have a constriction or some type of a temporary blockage. Like one thing that may happen is you may have a landslide or a slump, a major slump that drops into the canyon because the walls are getting saturated. assuming you've got major rainfall and stuff going on, the ground gets saturated, you may have major slumping events where material slides down into the canyon and temporarily causes a blockage of the flood, right? That's
Slows the flow.
And at some point, the water rises against that slump, and the pressure raises, and then it bursts through. And so now it's moving with this enhanced momentum, and it's going to be carrying a larger amount of sediment that it may have extracted, directly from breaching that the slump that temporarily blocked it. To me, that would be the first type of an explanation I would look for.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so you could have the slowing down, and it's long enough for it to drop a whole bunch of this normal size sediment, and then suddenly an acceleration that's carrying larger boulders that gets laid on top.
Yeah, you can see that, right down Bridge of the Gods on the Columbia, where that famous modern-looking Gothic bridge is that has been in several movies, and where I think it was the first night we stayed when we took when Brad and I took Graham and Santa on the trip to Minneapolis from Portland, just east of Portland, is Bridge of the Gods. Well, there's a Native American legend about how the Columbia was temporarily dammed when there was a tremendous landslide that basically filled the gorge at that point. And so a huge lake formed behind this landslide until eventually the pressure built up and it was able to force its way right through the unconsolidated material of the landslide. And then obviously when that happened, there would have been a temporary major increase in the current velocity and in the carrying capacity of the flows to entrain sediment and transport. And if I had to speculate as to what happened here, it would be some scenario like that somewhere back upstream, there was a temporary damming of the Bonneville Flood. I don't know how else to come up with an explanation. So, but we know that this has happened. We've seen it happen in multiple cases. So
I'm buying it.
Okay. And then this is up in Tammany Bar itself, up in Tammany Creek. Like I said, there are backwash sediments, but I would suspect that even if you look here, notice this. See that? Does that not look considerably coarser than this stuff up here?
Yep.
So
I would backwash from Bonneville, you think?
That's what I would. Yeah, it would have to be. This would have to be Bonneville backwash, and then this would be Missoula backwash. And then when you zoom in, boy, this story really is interesting here, because here you can really see, this is the settling of the currents, and what we're doing here is we're looking for the point at which the current reversal actually took place. And I think that's what we're seeing right here. I think we're seeing current moving in slowly one direction this way and then flowing back out this way.
And those are so fine and intricate. You don't have a scale anything in there, but that's probably not much more than 6 inches high.
Yeah, right. So,
all right, little intro for the next one, because it's a good time to be wrapping up here.
Yep.
Well, this won't necessarily be the next one, but at some point in the near future, we will dive into looking at what we know from studying modern examples of glacier-dammed lakes and outburst floods. And so, I've got a lot of, just zoom ahead. So here, this is what we're looking at, is a bunch of these various studies that I think will help give insight into, the Bonneville flood is not a glacier flood.
Right.
So that's one thing that's very distinct between that and the Missoula flood. Missoula flood, at least in the general, in the orthodox view, the Missoula flood is a ice dam, resulted from the bursting of an ice dam. I want to just show one more thing.
All right. Yeah, nobody likes to see end show, so give them a little more.
Don't click end show.
No.
All right. Okay, so let us do this. Go. back.
The dog just like
Oh yeah.
flew through the sky.
Ruffled the sky there, yeah.
Oh. I knew he walked behind me, but all right. So now here comes the snake down here in the lower right. And we see it coming up. This is all Hell's Canyon down here. And then it comes up here and right in this area where the Clearwater comes in from the east and joins the snake. And the snake forks to the west, comes along this way. So that Tammany Bar that we were looking at is just right in here. So you had the Bonneville Flood coming up this way, flowing along the snake like this, and ultimately dumping into the Columbia right here by Wallula Gap at the Tri-Cities area. So now, one of the questions that is in my mind is that when the Bonneville floodwaters came here, what was happening with the Missoula floods? Were Missoula floods already back ponding here above Wallula Gap, and the Bonneville floodwaters just joined them? Now, here's the thing to look at. This is the Cheney-Palouse Scabland tract that you see right here. And it's coming from the north, right up in this area, right? This is the Spokane River coming over this way, and it meets the Columbia right here in the Great Bend area. You got the Cheney-Palouse Scabland tract coming south across the Palouse landscape here. It intersects the Snake River right here. Well, what happened when the floods came down to Cheney-Palouse and hit the Snake River, the floods split. Some of the water shifted to the west going down. Some of it, there was so much water coming that some shifted to the east, and it was from this area, this Cheney-Palouse flow of the Missoula floods that back flooded all the way up here
Okay.
to Lewiston. That's okay. So here's a map showing the configuration of Glacial Lake Missoula. And here's the ice dam. Here's the Cheney-Palouse. Over here's the Telford Scabland. And then all of this represents areas that were drowned under the waters at one point or another within the whole phenomena of the Missoula floods. Right here, where all of this water comes together, right here at the border of Washington and Oregon, is where Wallula Gap is. Now, here comes the snake, like this, and you see this water coming? This is Missoula backflood.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's come here, and then look at here. It's backflooded up the Clearwater. In fact, we've driven up the Clearwater, and you see these massive boulder deposits up on the hillsides, hundreds of feet above the modern Clearwater River. Those clearly had to have been ice-rafted boulders that are being carried in the surging backflood currents of the Missoula. See, all this water is coming down here, and when it hits the snake, you just got to picture it just diverges in both directions. Some of the water spilled over the valley here onto the highlands and then flowed back in. But ultimately, most of the water either turned to the west, going down here, flowing towards Wallula Gap, or turned to the east, flowing here. And then, of course, as the water drained out, the hydraulic damming that would have taken place is over because the water level has cleared out. And then this water that has backflooded can reverse currents and flow back out.
Okay.
Is this making sense?
Wow. Yeah.
And there's not a huge change in the elevation. You know, there's not a real steep gradient, so it wasn't like it was really pushing water way uphill. I mean, it was somewhat, but not
Right.
like it was a steep gradient back to
Yeah,
Clearwater.
Just
Back,
filling the canyon.
Right. Yeah, here, this is an interesting digital relief map because the Cheney-Palouse flows are coming down here. And if you look in this area, you see all of the streamlining and all of the fluvially shaped features. And then it came down here, and then you had multiple dissections of this upland, this ridge here that separated what was the original Palouse River that flowed down here, right? This was the Palouse. You see the Palouse River flowed like this and then flowed more or less parallel to the Snake, and then flowed down here, right, eventually joining the Columbia. But as a result of the Cheney-Palouse flows of the Missoula flood, this ridge here was breached. And so actually what's happening here is that the original Palouse River that came like this and flowed to the west actually turns about 90 degrees here and flows through the Palouse Canyon. The Palouse Canyon is a ridge divide that was formed by catastrophic flooding, and it captured the Palouse. Now, this is going to be interesting and possibly important when we circle back around and we start talking about some of the wind and water gaps that you find in the Appalachians and how they might have formed.
So it seems like that the ancient Palouse River that's now dry would be a really great place to do research, because the feature is left. It's like it was created before that and then dried up after. And so it's sort of preserved from the modern river,
Right.
depositing and digging. And
right here, though, this where the old river channel was,
Yes.
that was scoured out and then filled. It's now a coulee. It's called Washtukna Coulee. And Washtukna or Washtukna Coulee it carried temporarily a pretty damn significant flow of water. And actually there was another, like right here is Devil's Canyon, where there was another breach. But Devil's Canyon is dry, and it's basically formed the same way as Palouse Canyon, which is here. But the Palouse Canyon captures the Palouse River, which joins the Snake right here.
right.
And so here you see this in this color photograph, you see very clearly it stands out the Cheney-Palouse tract of Scablands. So what you got here, all of this area around it is basically the basalt plateau, and it's covered with anywhere from a few dozen up to 200 feet thick of loess. And loess happens to be a very fertile material, so there's a lot of farming and stuff going on. But you can see here, there's two really very distinct Scabland tracts. The Telford, which is the westernmost tract, and the Cheney-Palouse. And there was some connection between the two. You see here the Crab Creek Coulee was a flow from the Cheney-Palouse that flowed to the west and then connected with the Telford. And I think this flow up here was flowing from the Telford, so this one was coming this way and then arced back around. It's complicated to work it out, but
Yeah, it is complex.
it is,
there.
yes. Down here you see Palouse Canyon. So you can see where all of this water is flowing, coming down and ultimately transecting and actually coming in at right angles to the Snake River here.
You guys remember the name for the interbraiding of all the channels?
I was just trying to think of what that is.
You guys talked about it being, well, that's how our conversation goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, we
Dang
stumped
it.
them.
It's on the edge of my
Yeah.
brain. Can't think of it. But I was writing something down and you interrupted me. Anastomosing.
Anastomosing.
I was gonna say it's behind my camera, but there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll pick it up with the Missoula floods.
Did you say there's 200 feet of loess in some of the areas around the Scablands there?
Yes.
Wow.
That is one hell of a mud cloud.
I know, that's a lot of mud
Yeah,
rain.
yeah.
It's-
Well,
Yeah.
no, I'm not saying, though, that the whole 200 feet was deposited in one episode.
Oh, that's no fun. Come on.
Well,
But if it weren't, you'd get striations or some kind of demarcations if it were layered.
Yeah, I wonder if they've done core samples of it to see if it's got.
But this
There's
is
a
just,
lifetime of work out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I'm just stunned to think of that. Just somehow all this stuff raining out of the sky, and like a giant mud volcano or whatever caused it. That's just astounding.
yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
check this
impact.
out. Now, here's
giant mud volcano.
here comes the Palouse River down this way. And here was the original channel, which is now Washtuna Coulee. And the river comes down, and right here it's captured because the floodwaters cut this canyon, see? But the canyon floor was deeper than the old channel of the original river. So once the river hit this point, it immediately diverts south, comes through here, and then discharges, beats the Snake right here. But there were multiple points of spill over here from the Cheney Palouse floodwaters coming down that met the Snake and then reversed the current of the Snake River this way to the east.
And look at all those erosion lines are all angled. Kind of gives you an indication of the sheet flood or whatever.
Yeah. And here's Devil's Canyon. Let's see if we come down here. Yeah, here's Devil's Canyon view south from the divide. So you're standing right up here looking down the canyon this way in this old photograph from 1938. And here's one that I took, whenever it was. And so it's looking, you can get a sense of the scale by looking at the vehicle here. So this is the ridge that was overtopped by the flood. And then the flood cut this 400-foot deep canyon here, which the highway now comes through. And on our Missoula trip, we'll undoubtedly be exploring this area and probably drive right through.
All right.
We can stop and have a photo op by these outcrops right here. Look at here. Here you can see the Palouse River coming down, and right here it's captured. And here goes the old valley of the original Palouse, which is now a coulee. And here's an aerial view of the coulee itself. Using this aerial coulee, you can actually see the demarcation. You see the floodwaters. You see where there's this transition from Scablands to topsoil, loess topsoil. You see that right there?
Yep.
All right. So I put a cross section in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And it's 1.5 miles wide, 320 feet deep.
Wow.
And then when we do the gradient, we can actually use the Chesney formula and calculate what this discharge was. In fact, I did that somewhere, and I thought I had it here. But
well, Kronos has got his hat on, so we got to end the show.
Right. Well, that's where I was going to end it, right there. I thought.
All right. Perfect. You're professional.
So much more.
Yeah, so much more. Well, what news we got, Brad? We've been uploading to HowTube. We're getting all that ready.
Yeah, that's the main push right now. Launch probably happened by the time this episode comes out. So yeah, we're going to be switching the main episodes to HowTube and want people to watch it there or directly on randallcarlson.com. Yeah. We got all the audio ones there now, but the videos are going to be embedded right into the website. We got the hats, the baseball caps available. Hopefully next episode, Russ will be wearing one.
Yes, finally.
So yeah, a bunch of stuff we've been working on, between recording podcast is going to start being visible and people can start to enjoy that and see it all.
Yeah, we've got the glory. We got the first generation of polyhedra, platonic polyhedra, assembled and finished and ready for shipping.
All right.
And they're pretty impressive.
They're beauties, yeah.
And maybe next episode we'll show some pictures, but there obviously will be photos on the Randall Carlson website and on HowTube.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into talking about some more esoteric stuff. Like the idea of the great year, which takes us back to, we'll probably reference the 1969 book, Hamlet's Mill. When we start looking at all of these events that we've been looking at in space, we're going to try to kind of come up with a comprehensive chronological framework for understanding these events. And that will take us back into the realm of archaic science and myth and what we can learn from looking at those older stories from hundreds to thousands of years ago and what they might teach us and what kind of insight they may convey into the events that we've been deciphering here through the lens of the geological science.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, how their versions of cyclic catastrophe by floods and fire we're actually discovering in the landscapes today. Yep.
Yeah, and then in there we'll talk about some of the great catastrophic cosmic fire events in history. And those are some amazing stories.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll be getting to that. We got a lot of juicy stuff.
Got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, man.
Can't wait.
Can't wait.
All right.
Well, thanks so much.
All right.
Enjoyed it.
guys.
Good night, guys. Good night,
Bonneville
everybody.
Thanks,
Hey,
everybody.
keep sending T-shirt photographs. If you got a Cosmographia T-shirt, send us photographs. You can send them to the email cosmographia1618@gmail.com. So keep sending them. All right.
That's
Thanks,
right,
guys.
Many thanks.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.